Hello and welcome, James. How you doing?
Very good, thanks, Guy. Very good. How are you doing?
Very good indeed. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. Just to kind of kick things off, I know you, but the rest of the world might not. I'm sure there are people that do. Just a really quick introduction into kind of who you are and what BRiMM is, because that's what we're gonna dive into.
Yeah, of course. Well, first and foremost, I'm a dad of two young boys, and second to that, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. Although probably would sort of cringe slightly when I say that. But I used to run a design and innovation studio for a number of years, which helped big businesses to innovate and grow. Which I exited a few years back. I've been an investor in the interim, but I was desperate to get my hands dirty again, so I'm in the process of creating a new business called BRiMM, and BRiMM is a planet shop, journal and collective. So it's all about this idea of a lower impact life without life feeling like less.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to get right into the detail of BRiMM, but before we get into that, it's always interesting to kind of understand everything that's come into your life that's kind of built up towards that. And it's always really interesting to talk to people like yourselves that have kind of been on that startup entrepreneurial journey and not just kind of started a business but taken it all the way through to an exit. So yeah, really interested to know kind of where did your career start? Then tell us a little bit more about the agency that you ran and kind of how you think that's played a role into where you are now with BRiMM.
Yeah, of course. When did my career start? So at university, I was doing music. Like I was studying biology, but I was really doing club promotion on the side. And so I was chasing around putting on events. And then that led me into a record label with some mates. And so we put out some hopefully good, but probably questionable UK hip hop over a number of years. But there was a really, I guess, important learning from that experience, which is that you can kind of do anything you put your mind to. So we didn't know how to get stuff stocked in HMV or ragged, or how to get stuff on the radio, or how to shoot a music video, or all that kind of stuff. But we learned how. Did that for a bit. When I left uni, I moved to London, and I wanted to get either in music or marketing, and I ended up a startup called Uni Village, which was a social networking startup for university students, which at the time was quite a competitive space with Facebook launching. So we grew very quickly, and then plateaued and died very quickly.
Yeah.
I learned a lot there about, I guess, like it was the sort of the time of MySpace and things like that. So I guess the early social web and how to do product development and how to do, I guess, online marketing. And then off the back of that, it led me to setting up my company. So I'd spent a year after that business was bought, freelancing and consulting. And off the back of that, set up an agency. And really the idea at the beginning was that we were a startup for hire. So we would go and help big businesses to build their own startup. What we were doing is, once we'd done a client project, we'd try and do our own startup, and we'd run out of money once we built the product, and then we'd have to go and do more client work. So that's how it started, and someone told me to focus, and we focused on the agency rather than doing our own startup, and it grew. You know, when I left it, we were, 150 people working with loads of big businesses globally to do loads of really big, exciting, fun work. But I guess your point about what the learnings that's led me from that towards BRiMM. So I guess towards what we were really good at is identifying market trends and opportunities for our clients. And so they would say that this has happened, what do we do in response? So it could be a new competitor, a new customer behavior, and they would then explore what they should be doing in response to it. And obviously the climate is on the horizon, at various different degrees.
Yes.
So we were starting to think a little bit about what does that mean for our clients? Like, what does it mean for their business, and what opportunities does it create? What threats does it create? And so it was starting to come into our work towards the end of my time there. And we did a net zero strategy, which was an interesting experience for us, where we think about how we become more purposeful. But after I left, my son was born in 2020, and his arrival made me think about the future in a very different way, as I think lots of parents say that is the case. And so I started to get a little bit concerned, quite frankly, about the climate crisis. And so I was like, well, I need to go and learn more. So I was reading loads. I went to the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, learned loads more, got more panicked. But ultimately, found a couple of ideas which were quite useful. But I'm an optimist at heart, and believe in the ingenuity of people and the power of optimism. And so I thought, actually, I'd love to create something in this space. And so that's a long-winded answer. There's probably different threads and narratives that I could build on. But I guess it's that journey that's led towards BRiMM. And there's a few more. I guess the big thing as an individual is, it's quite hard to think about what it means to live a lower impact life. It's quite complicated, it's quite confusing, it's quite time consuming. Quite often you feel like there's personal sacrifice, and when it comes like 2/3 of us say we want to do it, but we're not following through on it. And I think it's often because of the personal sacrifice that's required. But also you're told your individual actions don't account to much. And I think that kind of feels like you've got a loss of sense of agency, which is frustrating for people. So those things all together, along with the idea of, well, there's a lot of stuff to throw in the mix, we can unpack all of this.
Yeah.
The idea of decoupling, which is this sort of theory that I learned about it. All those things together created a little bit of a melting pot, which BRiMM has been cooked in, I think, to continue the melting pot analogy.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, what a story. I think that there's a hell of a lot of experience in there, and working for a few other people, branching out, going on your own. That is not any old. I think it's fully legitimate to call yourself an entrepreneur. That you've launched a company. Was it on your own, or did you have co-founders? But taking a company all the way up to sort of 150. Did you say 150 employees?
Yeah. No, so it was. No, I set it up by myself, and then that can be a lonely journey. So I brought people in later on. So ultimately built a really fantastic management team, people that remain very close friends to this day, who I couldn't have built it without to where it was. Absolutely.
What was the time period from the agency from sort of start to exit?
So I set up in 2009. And we sold it in 2018, and then we were there for a period of time after that. And
Amazing.
I think Mark was my first employee, but then became a business partner. He probably joined at sort of year 3 or 4. So there were the lonely first few years before then. But yeah.
So then you managed that sort of earn out period, and then it sounds as though you've kind of had a little play around, with the exit under the belt, and done some investing, kind of looked around the market, and I'm sure you learned. I mean, what did you learn in that process? Because it's quite an interesting space, having exited something that you've been working on sort of 9-10 years, and finding yourself with a bit of time, bit of money, and then obviously you got this sort of passion. And it sounds as though you're similar to me in that I'm eternally optimistic. I read sort of books about crisis and see opportunities and fixing problems, and that's the bit that gets me going and going, right, well, that's broken, you could come up with this solution, try this, do that. I find it much easier being in that position rather than living in a life of panic and thinking, well, what are we going to do? Is actually go, do something about it. What can we throw at this? So how just talk about that transition a little bit, and then we'll really dive into BRiMM in a bit more detail.
Of course. I mean, I guess the start of that, so I left in 2021. And in my head I was like, I'm somebody that builds businesses, and so I had a plan to literally walk out of that company and start another one on the next day. And it was a carbon removals platform, and I'd seen an opportunity around the growth of the carbon removals market, and I specifically mean removals rather than offset, where I had this idea, we did a lot of financial services work in my company, and there was the emergence of what was called the robo-advisor, which was in the wealth management space, where we'd have what's called model portfolios that have that bundle together asset classes of investment opportunities for retail investors that had a simplified risk management approach, which is a bit complicated, but I thought that idea could be applied to carbon removals, because ultimately what needed to happen is a blended purchase activity with a much higher permanence, solutions like DAC and DOC being part of it. And so I was going to go and do that, and had a whole plan ready to go, and a mate who'd sold his business the year before said, don't. And so he was like, take some time out, which was good advice. And I also had this thing where Callie, our eldest son, I just imagined him in the future saying, Dad, you've worked on plan B, why did you work on plan B? And so I didn't. I kind of took a moment. I thought it would be a couple of months where I kind of explored what else I might do. Ended up being a couple of years, because this wasn't really your question, but I had an identity crisis after I'd left my company, because I set it up in my early 20s, and as my partner Abby would say, I was it and it was me. I would meet people and I'd be like, here's what I do, and it was like, and so when I didn't have it, I didn't know what to say to people, and I didn't know who I was, and it was I got pretty sad for a while, you'd be somewhere and people would be like, oh, nice to meet you, what do you do? That kind of a really typical question that you get, but I dread it. I'd be like, they're about to ask me, what do I say? So I had that period of time which it was a while, and I kind of got comfortable with the fact of saying I'm a dad first and foremost, because that's what I'm focused on at the moment. And then I got through it, but
That's quite a common. I've heard that so many times. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? We're all certainly on the founder side of things. You're building these companies, and it's kind of we're all on this pathway where the success is an exit, and then actually when you drill into that question, is it, and will I be happier, and what will I do with my time? But that identity crisis is something that I've spoken to loads of exit founders. We've got a lot of exit founders that come to our events as angels, and they're now kind of, they've worked on these companies for 10, 20 years, and that is who they are, and they've put their, blood, sweat and tears into something, and then suddenly, one day it's on and then the next day it's off, and it's kind of really hard to work out what's next. So yeah, sounds like having almost kind of going through that process is pretty interesting, giving yourself a bit of time to go what next.
Yeah,
it's good, and then that reignites the fuel to be like, I want to go again, and I want to do something brilliant, I want it to be bigger, I want it to be better, more impactful. So
I mean, I don't know if it's a cop out. I was like, actually no, that is what I do. That friend who gave me that advice, he's not gone again, and I think he's found a purpose that's not work, and I think that's important. Like, and again, my purpose doesn't work. There's a sort of a higher order here, like that I'm building towards. But for me, I just had that itch, and now I've got a real fire in my belly again. But to answer the broader bit of the question, that period of time in between, so it was that side. It was a really interesting sort of learning experience. I've ended up backing probably about 25 businesses direct, 40 through 3 funds that I'm invested in, one of which I'm a founding investor of, and I sit in the investment committee for. And that has been fascinating, and it kind of, it's what I used to love about my old job. You just get to meet people all the time. You get to learn about really different industries, and it's so stimulating, and it's really good. I thought I would end up doing sort of like advisory work with them, but I don't think I was quite ready. And ultimately what I realised when I did do a bit of that was that I started something myself again.
Not getting your hands dirty, get me in there, get me in the problems.
Yeah, exactly. And so here we are.
Awesome. Well, what a story up until now, and it's sort of, the page turns, new chapter, and in comes BRiMM. So let's dive into BRiMM in a bit more detail. What is the kind of the mission on, what's the North Star? What's the ambition of what you're trying to create?
Yeah, well, our purpose is to make planet positive living inspiring, joyful and accessible. And so that creates a lot of space for us to play in. Our mission is we've got this concept of something called purposeful commerce, and we call it a people-powered model for change. And so our mission really is to sort of get that working, and we've quite deliberately, created space in that language so we can grow the business in a particular way. But ultimately at the moment, a sustainable life isn't the default choice. You have to work at it, and that's a problem. And so it needs to be made the default, and it needs to be made more interesting than anything else. Like people don't like giving things up, they don't like downgrading, they like upgrading. So our whole thing is, how do we make this about having more? It doesn't mean more things, more stuff to consume. It's how do we find more meaning in what we've got? So there's more stories, there's more joy, there's more colour from things. Like the name BRiMM speaks to this idea of us overflowing as a planet. We're consuming at something like 1.7 times the sustainable rate of natural resources, which is mad. We have more than enough stuff already. So the name BRiMM speaks to that, about being full, but the idea of finding joy in enough as well. And so, we really sort of see that opportunity in reframing this space in a smart way. So it's kind of like, it's not about giving up, it's about getting more, but it's that more is actually sort of, it's not actually having more things, it's having more meaning and more joy from what we have. But to make it much more tangible, we're going to publish content around a planet positive lifestyle. So we've got this idea of 4 pillars. So what you put on your body, what you put on your body, in your body, how you move and how you live. Those things together make up the entirety of our impact for BRiMM. So we write about all of them. And then we're going to be selling products in a growing number of categories over time. So we're launching in beauty and personal care, in kitchen, store cupboard and home cleaning, because we think first people need to reset their everyday, and then we'll open up in new categories beyond. So we're looking at wellness, kids, pets, fashion. That sounds broad, and it is in terms of the number of categories. We're going to be quite focused in our curation. So we talk about being the enough store. That's sort of in contrast to Amazon's everything store. But yeah, so it's content and commerce, and it's backed by a membership business model. And so that membership business model, I'll sort of explain how it works in a minute, but ultimately what it enables us to do is enables us to do something quite unique, which is we can invest 10% of our revenue in initiatives with the brands that we stock to lower their impact faster than they currently are. So all of the brands are both curated for being great products, vetted for working on low impact business models, but then what we do then is help them go further faster through this fund that we have, our Planet Fund. And that activity is possible because we have that joint revenue stream, membership and e-commerce. And we say it's a minimum of 10%. We'd like to do that. Whole idea is that our members lower their footprints by engaging with us, and they in turn lower the footprint of the brands that they shop from. So it's that there, the heart is what we call purposeful commerce. People buying better, fueling more, making better, which then makes people buying better. And it's kind of like this flywheel at the heart of it. And we, longer term, believe that concept could be applied much more broadly to our store. It could apply to any transaction that somebody makes across their life. We would make money and sort of can fund the business through the membership, and we repurpose this margin from anything that people might be engaging with for good. So that's the kind of the bigger thing. But right now,
I like it. It's one of those ones that if you could click your hands and kind of jump forward and have thousands, if not millions, of members and a busy commerce platform with the best products in the world, you can fully see it. But it's I know you're at an earlier stage than that, and so you're in that. Is it fair to say that chicken and egg scenario? Like, how do you get the members? How do you bring the members and the brands? And how do you build something like this? Because when you start getting scale, it makes total sense. But it's kind of where are you at on that journey, and how are you tackling some of those challenges?
Yeah, good question. So we're pretty early. We've been working on it for a while, but we're not live yet. And so we've got X thousand people on email lists and on social accounts and stuff who are kind of interested and up for it, which is great. We've got a fantastic lineup of brands already signed up and really, really up for it, and then like a backlog of others that want to come on. So we're in a really good place for it, but we're not fully operational yet. As I said, we're starting in 3 categories, and we're actually starting in a very focused way. So we're going to be doing what we call reset boxes in each of those categories. This is all about behaviour change. Like, we're not saying to people should sign up to go through a behaviour change programme, but as you know well, really what needs to happen is behaviour change at scale. We need to switch from one thing to another thing. And so we're starting that with our reset boxes. And so the idea is you can reset your bathroom in one tick with this box, or you can reset your cleaning cupboard with one tick, you can reset your pantry with one tick. And so it basically takes the stress and the challenge off people who have to go and discover new brands and work out if they're any good, and if they're any good, do they taste any good, or do they work any good. And we've done that for you. So basically with these reset boxes, it's the start of a journey. So we're just starting in 3 categories. There's 5 boxes in total, and that's all we're doing in the first instance, and then we'll grow from there. So we knew that we had to start in a focused way, and then we build from there. To give you a flavour, so we've got 3 bathroom boxes. One is a plastic-free one, so there's none of the product any plastic in it. There's one which is minimal, which is just the absolute minimum of amount of stuff you need. And another one is the British luxury box, which is a bit more premium. So that's where we're starting, and it's going to be all about bringing people on the journey with us. I think more than anything, we're talking about building a collective of people. Those are members and brands who believe in a planet positive future and are looking to connect with other like-minded climate optimists who believe that the future can be different. I was having a really interesting call with someone just before this, and we were talking about this, like you can mourn what we're losing, or you can get excited about what we can create. And I think there's an opportunity where we can be very, as citizens, we can take a very participatory view in the world that we can create tomorrow. And it's not a world that's going to get created for us. We can play a role together, and that's really that's the core of what we're offering. It's an opportunity to connect with people that believe in a different tomorrow. And doing it might just mean buying a deodorant with us rather than somewhere else. But more like we're doing events, and people will be able to vote on how we spend the Planet Fund, and there'll be much more sort of deeper levels of engagement for those that want to.
Yeah, okay. And then just the membership model. So if average Joe on the street comes in and wants to buy a reset box, what's that process? Could they go, is there a route where you're just a commerce platform that has you've done the verification on the products, you're enabling them to reset their bathroom, which I really like that concept, by the way. But then you did mention the membership side of things. So just for absolute clarity, how does that add it to the mix?
Yeah, of course. So you don't have to be a member to shop with us. We were kind of keen that we would kind of have open access. So anyone can come in and buy a box, or when we open up into individual products soon after, that you can do that. There's just member benefits, and so membership starts at £6 a month and goes up to £18 a month, and then there's an annual version of each of them, obviously. And what you get for it is benefits across content, shopping, and events. And so the entry tier is £6 a month, and you get one member article a week from really high profile writers who work from like the top publications that you might imagine, and event access. Then the next tier gives you retail benefits, so we give you credit to encourage you to make your first purchase, so you can try out new products. And then we offer you ongoing cash back to bring down the cost of future purchases. And then you've got the opportunity to vote on the initiatives that we've got. And the top tier basically gives you more credit to what we're doing. So the idea is, yes, there's a membership, but if you engage with us and shop with us, you more than get your membership's value back. So we think probably double or triple the worth value. And then 10% from everything you spend on all the tiers goes into the Planet Fund. So that's how.
Cool. All right. Well, and am I right in thinking, number one? It sounds as though in your early career you were going against Zuckerberg and Meta and Facebook, or was it what it was when you were getting that going? And now today you're gonna have a crack at Bezos and take down Amazon. Would that be the is that the antithesis of what you're trying to create? Is a better version of commerce? Obviously you build it up over time and reshape the way that we are interacting as consumers.
Yes. I say that sort of cautiously about taking on Amazon, but actually, I mentioned earlier on the idea of decoupling. So that Cambridge course, we were talking two theories. One is degrowth.
Yeah.
One is decoupling. So they were saying this is how we get out of this mess. Degrowth is what we need to do. Like, that's what we actually need to do. But what it's going to mean is that we need to come off the idea of GDP as a single global metric for success. And what that requires is global cooperation on a level that is just not possible or happening at the moment, I would suggest. That's what we need to do, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Like, if you look at like global leadership at the moment, the idea of that kind of cooperation, it just doesn't feel very feasible. And so decoupling is the other option. And so, I'm going to come back to your answer more specifically in a second, but decoupling is this idea that the economy can grow away from resource use. And so one unit of growth doesn't mean one unit of resource use. Yeah. And I heard that and I was like, this is about a train that's left the station that you can repurpose in a particular way. I was like, that feels viable. Like, we've known about the climate crisis for decades. We've known about the solutions for decades. Like, all the technology and all the ideas exist already. We know how to get out of this, but we're just not doing it. Because, it requires a level of change that we're just not, people en masse aren't ready for. There's people that have made the changes and have done so a long time ago. But we need the general populace to make a change. Yes. And I think that shopping, and sometimes people roll their eyes a little bit at this, but I think shopping is a power. Where we choose to buy and what we choose to buy is a vote for a different kind of system. And with BRiMM, we say that we're offering two votes. Firstly, you can buy a new product that is supporting a small, medium-sized business that is building itself in a different way. So that's vote number one, and that will then encourage that business to be able to do more. But then you're also voting for our model, this people-powered purpose of commerce model. And that is where we were reinvesting margins in that business, the first business, becoming even better than it already was. And so that, going back, yes, Bezos is in the crosshairs. Do we really to sending Katy Perry into space? That's where that business has ultimately taken us. But if we could, Chris Baker, I'm sure who's the CEO of Serious Tissue. He talks about if 1% of spend was repurposed, that's $700 million, I guess, or pounds, voting for a different type of way of doing business. Like, that's a huge sum of money. And then if those businesses then go and do more, like, it's phenomenal. And so I really believe that commerce can be repurposed. And I think this is a new model that has got huge legs that could be expanded in lots of different ways. Yeah,
it's interesting because that degrowth thing, in my mind, humans are never going to slow down on wanting things to progress, and they want more and they want it better, and it's a really tough thing, that, because human nature is pretty ingrained, and changing that isn't gonna isn't going to happen in our lifetime, really, though much effect. But I think when you see platforms like BRiMM and kind of the way that people are approaching this sort of innovative approach to solve problems, I think you are presenting a solution whereby there is a better way, and I think certainly in the commerce space, the work that people are doing now on cleaning up their supply chains, simple things like better packaging.
Yeah.
There is a consumer demand by that, and then the role of circularity is just getting insane as we use different materials and we can repurpose products, and there's the kind of end of life when we're moving away from that linear system into a more circular one. That one feels more realistic, but as long as the products and the services that are being offered, they've got to be able to compete with what already exists. The cheap plastic that no one really wants is, plastic is a phenomenally good material. It's really hard to compete with, but we've got to be really smart with it. So I think that's where BRiMM, you're able to kind of act on, if I'm right, and do jump in if I'm getting this totally wrong, you're able to kind of act on behalf of the consumer, go and find the brands that are genuinely looking at the kind of more circular solutions, that are creating products that compete with the very best. So you're not sacrificing on anything, and are comparatively competitive on price. And if you can bring that all into one platform and help people on that journey to finding a better way to live and make more sustainable life choices, then that's really exciting. Because I grapple with that degrowth thing. I can't see humanity really slowing down its kind of want and need for more stuff. It's never going to change. The one that I always look at is how much we all fly.
Yeah.
You look at the stats, we're flying more and more, and having a few kind of activists saying, well, don't fly, I'm completely boycotting it, is just the wrong route. If we actually focused on finding better fuels and finding better innovations, then we should fly more and be more inspired by the world. So I think it's platforms like BRiMM that are going to make a huge difference. Is that your stance on the sort of degrowth side of things?
Absolutely. My stance on it is that it is what we should do, but it's unlikely. It's like it just doesn't feel feasible in any near, unless there were to be like an absolute catastrophe, like all the tipping points were to run away and we were to be forced into it. I don't think it's going to happen otherwise. And so then it's okay. So what do we do? It's about repurposing existing activity. But there's a few things you said there which are absolutely right. What we switch to has to be at least as good as what we're currently doing, or indeed better, because it's not about it being just better packaging. What's in the packaging needs to work, needs to be tasty, needs to look great, etc. So that's fundamental. And I think some businesses that have looked in this past have kind of missed that. If you want people to switch en masse, that needs to be absolutely true. So that's the case. And then yes, absolutely to everything you just said. There's also an important point about what we're doing here, where our primary business model is we're a membership. So we're not a retailer. We're a membership business, and our membership business will. There's this quote like Tony Hayes from Zappos always used to say, "We don't optimize for the conversion, we optimize for the relationship," and it's always stuck with me. It's quite a powerful idea. And with BRiMM, we optimize for having a membership for longer, or we will do when we're live, because our goal is to help you, Guy, to live a lower impact footprint without living a low impact life, without life feeling like less. And so our intent is to be with you as a member for longer and help you do that. Now today the shop is really important because it's what fuels our planet fund and enables us to have impact. It also is a very tangible way for you to take action. But what we would love to do is that stage one is that you buy what you currently buy from us instead of somewhere else, and in doing so we would hope that means that wallet spend has a lower footprint than it does currently. What might happen in stage two is that you actually buy differently, because we've connected you with a repair service that enables you to look after that chore jacket that you're wearing, or we've got a rental service, which means you might be able to you probably wouldn't rent a wetsuit because you're in the water so much anyway with your own, but allows you to rent something rather than buying it. And our business model should enable us to do that. And ultimately what we will try to do is identify margins in all of these opportunities, which is replacing the retail margin and ultimately funds our planet fund. And enables that to keep going. And so that again sort of puts it into a horizon thing, but we think we're designing our business to enable to ultimately encourage the type of behaviour change that we need. It starts by saying what we're offering is really fun and exciting. You can still see the world, you can still have these fantastic experiences, but we then, through the relationship, and it show rather than tell that there is this alternative. Now, using the example of flying, we're never going to say to someone don't fly, but when we editorialize travel, we will focus on places that you can get to by train, or that you can get to by ferry or by public transport. Now, we're not going to make a deal about that. We're not going to say you don't fly to get here, but we're going to focus on that. Now, when it comes to recipes, we're not going to make a deal about being vegetarian or vegan, but we are going to focus on plant-based meals. But the reason why, with each of those examples, is slow travel is great for people, like connecting with culture and place. And create stories, which is really what travel is all about, stories and experiences. Plant-based living is great for your gut. Forget the planetary impact, it's fantastic for you. Yeah. And so we'll try and find those things and emphasize that. But to your point about innovation, like a friend of mine runs the Sustainable Markets Initiative for the UK, and that kind of thing where the need is to create markets for the alternative, like sustainable aviation fuel. I absolutely believe in. We need to stimulate that. This is a personal view, we need to stimulate that and we need to support it. And I think if there is shown to be industry and consumer demand, that will drive waves of innovation that will enable us to have, zero emissions travel in the future. Absolutely. So I'm kind of all in on that.
Yeah.
We won't say to fly or not to fly.
Yeah.
Hey, this is cool over here.
Nice. And then we're just final bit of clarity on the kind of model, because this has been really helpful on kind of painting a picture on where you're going. How will that Planet Fund be distributed? Because that's pretty unique. There's not many other commerce platforms that are kind of raising this fund. So what happens with that fund, and how does it get distributed?
Yeah. So I'll answer the question, I'll share something before getting into that. So I guess our journey to the point that we are at the moment sort of saw us exploring different spaces of what we could do. And so we were really keen on the idea of a membership model, membership and retail. And what we started with is saying, well, what we'll do is we will make it cheaper for people to buy sustainable products. And that's great because it's money back in someone's pocket. And that's a big blocker at the moment, it's cost. A lot of people talk about that. That's something we could unpack in a long conversation. But started there, but we said, actually, do you know what? What it does is it propagates expectations around discounts. And the online discount space, or the retail discount space, is mad. It's absolutely absurd. And if you're anchoring lower prices in people's minds, they're always going to expect that. And the businesses that we're stocking have a higher cost of doing business, as you know, right? Being a purposeful company is above and beyond. So they need to get, and they need to be able to charge full price. And we want to support that. And so we said, okay, what do we do with a margin that we could repurpose, because we've got the membership, so our margin's in the membership. So how can we repurpose the retail margin? So we said, actually, maybe what we'll do is we'll invest in nature-based projects. But I knew from that work I'd done looking at that market, from that business I'd looked at, I was like, that just didn't feel right. And even though you can approach it in a particular way, actually what we wanted to do is say, well, let's not fuel that, let's focus on mitigation. So let's actually think about how we prevent impact from happening. So that is what the fund will do. So we're going to invest a minimum of 10% of revenue in this activity. And ultimately what we're going to focus on is the initiatives that the brands need support with and that our members think we should do. And we'll facilitate that, but we will get the brands together. We'll facilitate them to explore their purpose roadmaps. What are the initiatives that they need to do or thinking of doing? How can we identify commonalities in it? How can we then group them together to pursue those? So I think in the first instance, just doing that, connecting businesses around common problems, they will go further faster just by doing that. What we'll then be able to do, we believe, is barter on their behalf for collective buying power. So all of them will need to understand their scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. We'll be able to get a deal with a carbon accounting platform that's cheaper through BRiMM than it would be if they were getting it direct. So collective buying, but then the third thing is funding. And this is grant funding, it's not equity funding. We will support them with initiatives. So the first one we're doing, and the reason we've done this is because it's a universal need, we're doing a new solar project. So we're putting an array on a warehouse via Urban Chain, who I know is a friend and a business in your community.
Yeah.
We're putting that through Urban Chain, and then we're creating a PPA. Well, they're doing this. They're putting a PPA around the BRiMM brands, and so our brands will be able to switch to 100% renewable energy via this scheme that we've invested in. And any money that's made is going to be reinvested in putting new panels up. and so they'll be able to get more renewable money for less money than they currently pay from a utilities provider, which is possible via 10 Energy,
Ah,
another business in the network,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and Urban Chain, who are like both fantastic, super cool businesses. So that's what we're doing first, because all of the businesses we work with need energy. What we
Well,
would look at in the
this is
future,
music to my ear, James. I had no idea that this is happening behind the scenes, but this is kind of what we dreamed of when we were putting together kind of our network of business solutions, that there would be loads of cross pollination on everyone supporting each other, because yeah, the solution, like we've said it before, the solutions are there. It's like adoption, and then what you're effectively saying here is that there is a collective buying power when you get a load of like-minded people and brands that all come together, that actually you can then start reducing the costs,
yeah,
and then it becomes more and more viable, not just for the middle few but everyone, which is brilliant. So amazing that Howard over at 10 is onto an absolute winner. Samaya, actually amazing. I don't know. I'm sure you saw her article of her story in the Sunday Times. If you haven't, definitely have a read, because amazing where she's come from, where she's going, and that's one of our fastest growing companies I've ever worked with.
I mean,
There's two very cool companies there.
yeah.
I had no idea that you were doing that.
Yeah, that's what we're doing, and and that in itself has tremendous legs. Like
Yeah.
if you when you then start to play out what that could be,
Mm.
one of the brands that we're stocking, Northern Pasta Co, who make fantastically tasty pasta using
I
regenerative
don't know that one.
methods. Yeah, they're great. Yeah, they've already got solar panels for their thing, but their facility, but they want a battery, and so
Mm.
maybe we can support them to get that. And so when you start to think of the network
Yeah.
between members and brands and all that kind of stuff, we could do a lot around just energy there,
Mm.
using 10 and Urban Chain. But beyond that, there's more. We intend to go, do more, but we want to understand what the brands need. But loads of the beauty brands we were speaking to have mentioned they would like a plastic alternative for the pump, but loads they don't meet
Right.
MOQs by themselves to tool up a factory to do it, or they can't afford to do the R&D. If we had 15 brands that all wanted to do it
Mm.
together, that creates an order quantity that would go over MOQs, and we might fund the R&D for it. And
Right.
so that then would lead to materials innovation that all of our brands could use. Having done it, it will then be cheaper for any other brands to use. And so we don't, that we would love that innovation diffusion to happen. So it can then, because what needs to happen is all these things need to be scaled.
Yeah.
So our idea is we can do these very tangible initiatives within the community. It's funded by our members, delivered by our brands. That lowers the footprint of our brands, and in turn lowers the footprint of our members. And so that is the thinking of it. And if like I'm often reminded that people say when you're setting up a business, you should keep things simple. This is not keeping things simple. It would have
Yeah.
been easier for us to do
Well, I
offsetting.
was going to come on to that. Like, what is? Because I'm conscious we're really we're burning through time, but that's a sign
Yeah,
of a good conversation. I think we could go forever. But what is there is a complexity to what you're doing, because we've
yes,
been chatting for I don't know. I've actually not got the timer on, which is not good for when I go over time, because I can talk forever.
yeah.
40 minutes in. What is the kind of been the biggest challenge? Because there is a complexity to this, and my instinct says it is just getting people's head around it, because the more you explain it, the more it's a no-brainer. But I guess if the easier the narrative, the quicker the adoption. Is that what's been the challenge to date, or is it still early days?
I mean, a particular day brings different challenges. But yeah, this business ultimately is going to live and die on our ability to bring new members on. Like,
Yeah,
simple as that. We
yeah,
are a consumer business. I prefer to use the word citizen, but we're in the consumer space, and as you all know well, it's expensive to attract people to what you do. So this is
yeah,
going to live and die on that. We hope that what we're doing creates lots of creates lots of stories that people can tell. Like, it helps people feel like they've got a sense of agency. They will then tell their friends about it. Now we hope that will happen at scale, and that means that we'll have support from our community in marketing. So that's
yeah,
kind of our number one challenge. We think we're doing a number of things that will support to help that. But you're right, like apps like, we've had 40 minutes to unpack this. People
yeah,
don't often have 40 minutes to get into something, like they're discovering stuff online or
yeah,
in the pub or whatever. So our challenge is, how do we communicate this in a very simple way? But, it's really interesting, because we've gone to quite a lot of lengths thinking about how this all works. But we did a photo shoot of the products the other day, and I was showing somebody, and they're like, "Oh my God, these are beautiful products," and that was
mm,
it. They just saw a picture of like a series of things. They're like, "Oh, this is just really nice stuff that you pulled together." I'm like, "Yes, it is."
Yeah.
And
And
they
is
were like,
this
"Okay, I'm in."
this is the bathroom stuff that you're sort of leaning on
Yeah.
pretty hard to get this going? What sort of products have you got in there? Give us a bit of an example.
So, have you heard of a business called Roller Guy?
Yeah, yeah, this
So
is good.
yeah, so Roller, fantastic deodorant that's making me smell good today. So that's one of them. We've
And
got
me.
yeah, I love Milo. So yeah, Roller's in there. We've got Wildsmith, we've got Upcircle, we've got Hotel Mike, which is fantastic. We've got Bamford, we've got loads of businesses, like
Yeah.
loads. Some you'll have heard of,
Mm.
loads you won't. And that's the kind of the thing is that we want this to be about discovery as well as sort of we need a few that people understand and know, but there needs
Yeah.
to be that sort of halo effect. But there's also like a discovery element, and
Nice.
so it won't really work on this. But if we were just doing this, I'd show you some pictures of the stuff we've got. But it's like really cool stuff. Like in the food category, we've got Citizens of Soil,
Oh,
Nice
lovely, yeah.
Rice, like yeah, just really fantastic stuff. Tincture London is one of the cleaning brands which I really love. Mac, which is a super cool cleaning product, and more. So that is something that actually lands quite quickly with people when they see imagery of what we've
Yeah.
got, and they're like, "Oh, okay."
Mm.
And then we can, because really in of itself, this is useful, like a well curated store
Yeah.
of nice products that have lower impact business models. That in of itself is the starting point,
Yeah.
and then everything else can come off the back of it. And
Yeah.
so the idea that membership brings you benefits and that membership gives you greater impact through the fund.
Mm.
So yeah, but we haven't cracked all that. Like there's a
Yeah, yeah,
hierarchy
yeah. And
thing
so
that we
you're
need.
built. Where exactly are you on the journey? So there's this. You've got the plan. You're building. You've got. Sounds like a bit of a team around you. But how far off are you kind of launching and kind of starting to get things properly moving?
Yeah, so we're launching in the week of the 17th of June.
Oh,
So people will be able to buy memberships and the first 5 boxes then. And then at the beginning of July, we're going to open up the broader store. So you'll then be able to buy each individual product in the boxes and a broader range from those brands. And then probably every 2 to 4 weeks after that, we'll be expanding the offering from the shop point of view. We've got and a series of events coming as well, and because of events are part of the membership. So we've got an event tomorrow at ELV Denim in Soho. We've got a field day planned with British Pasture Leather to go and visit a regenerative farm and understand how that works.
yeah.
We've got an afternoon with Amy Powney, who's just launched a kin. So we've got this whole series of stuff. So 17th of June is the launch, or launch week, and then it's rolling out from there.
Of
And it'd be
June.
remiss of me not to mention that we've got a really great founder membership deal. So this is a one-off fee for a lifetime membership, and so it's if you understood the product offer we've got what we're launching, it's a really
Yeah.
good deal. But we just ask that you bring some friends with you to get it.
We share links because it's unique, and I think people in the you're preaching to the right sort of choir in the Blue Earth community, and there's loads of founders and lots of products that I know that you're going to be stocking are sort of already in our world and part of our community, and yeah, I think there's so much correlation. And then with regards to the kind of funding of the business, where are you at on kind of yeah, I imagine for this to really take off, there is an expense building the platform, curating the brands, building a journal, bringing in a membership. There's a lot of infrastructure that sits behind that, and then obviously to market this and get it out there. I feel like advocacy is going to be a huge part of what you do, and word of mouth can go so far. But how have you funded it to date, and kind of how are you going to fund it going forward?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to be able to fund it myself to date, which has been good and bad, I guess, in some respects. But it's
Yeah.
enabled us to get ready to be in market, and so we are now fundraising, and we're looking for values-aligned investors who believe in our mission and want to build a planet-positive future. But we want to be really focused with how we build, because we really understand the sort of the context at the moment from an investment point of view, and so our near-term goal is really understanding the unit economics of our business. What can we get break even from a membership perspective at the right number, and we
Yeah.
really understand where our growth drivers come from, what our behaviour of members is, etc. So we can validate our model and go from there. But yeah, so we are raising. I'm lucky to have a good network, so we've got like a lot of it is already covered, which is really good. But we are. We would like-minded people to be on the journey with that kind of want to support what we're doing, and so there is space for some more investors to come in.
Brilliant. Okay, well, there's some pretty clear call to actions. I think there's people can come on board as members, and there's a founder member opportunity to kick things off that is a sort of once in a lifetime. Let's go there.
Exactly that.
then sort of late June, 17th of June, I think you said, is when you're kind of opening up the platform. So obviously kind of getting you off to a good start. And then if you are listening in and you're an investor and you feel aligned to the mission and everything that you're doing and reshaping commerce, then obviously we'll look at how we can connect you up and get you talking to James. But yeah, I think we're in the process of beginning to wrap things up. But I think where you've come from and the experience you've obviously gained from working for a few other people, then running a business, not any old business, but an agency that grew to 150 people, taking it all the way through to exit, had that kind of, I don't know, you opened up really honestly on that kind of bit of time off, bit of an identity crisis, really having the chance to kind of think about where to go next. And it's clear that you've been really selective on kind of pouring all of your experience into BRiMM, which I love the name, by the way, and the brand is really cool. And I'm absolutely loving the network that you're kind of using in order to kind of reinvest back into the ecosystem. I really think you've got a totally different business model that has huge scalable opportunities, and I think it's a very, very exciting time with you at the helm, and what you've started so far. So yeah, congrats, and brilliant to have you in our network, and awesome to hear that you're already sort of spinning around and working with people like Roller and 10 and Urban Chain. I'm sure there's more, the list will go on.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's exciting times. But before we do leave, I always have one question, and it's a mean one, because you're working with so many, you've got lots of, you've invested in a lot of companies, and I'm sure you've got awesome products spinning around you all day, every day. But what is the company that springs to mind that you're really inspired by at the moment?
Wow. I mean, so many I could answer. There's like brands that we'd love to have on our platform that I think are doing really cool stuff. But I think in terms of, we've already touched on, I think what Urban Chain is doing is really interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's really fascinating. I think the idea of creating a PPA wrapper for small businesses is really smart. Being able to do what that, the potential for that is quite remarkable. Like, people often say that we get overly fixated on energy as an area to be focusing on with the climate crisis, but it is one that we do need to focus on. And
yeah,
I think
energy is kind of, it unlocks a huge amount, and abundant, clean source of energy is pretty game changer, and it's happening, which is exciting. So we'll leave on that positive note. Thank you so much for joining us, James, and we're really excited about getting behind BRiMM and doing what we can to help. But thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Guy. Thank you.